Hello there, and welcome to the Last Time Film Podcast. So we talk film, TV, games, and all that jazz like there's no tomorrow. This week we're talking about The Rings of Power. My name is Tom, and as always, I'm joined with my co-host John. How are you this week?
I'm doing great. I might sound different because I'm finally on computer this entire time.
Whoa.
Whoa! What a twist. So I'm very excited to use this weekly.
Well, you sound great on my end, so that's
Great.
good. So let's begin a new era where we hopefully both sound good.
So, Rings of Power. This series brings to screens for the very first time the heroic legends of the fabled Second Age of Middle-earth's history. This epic drama is set thousands of years before the events of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and takes viewers back to an era which great power. Oh my! Oh, I just looked. The description is very long.
Okay, we'll cut it there. We'll cut it there. That's good
Yeah,
enough.
that's fine. That's fine because it literally just talks about. It literally talks about. It's just the entire. Okay, no, We're not doing that. No, we're not doing that. No
Brilliant.
way.
Brilliant. Okay, so Rings of Power. Spoilers ahead if you haven't seen it. What did you think?
It was actually really good. Like I was a bit skeptical about like how they're gonna, do something like that set thousands of years before the original trilogy and The Hobbit, and how are they gonna, build around Tolkien's stories about Middle Earth, and how is it gonna, a prequel gonna set everything up? And I thought it was really interesting how it was setting up with these characters throughout the show, which I will talk about more. I thought it had emotional impact.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this series has been the talk of the town for a long time, and first and
Mm.
foremost, Amazon has spent so much money on this
How
show.
much? How much?
I
How much?
think I think across so that the plan is 5 seasons. They've got a 5 season story
Oh,
that's gonna,
that's not bad.
one season every other year. I don't know. I guess it's gonna end somewhere around 2030, which is just insane to think about. But reportedly, they've spent $1 billion on the production of
$1
this.
billion.
$1 billion. That is
Uh,
absolutely insane. That's insanity. That's more money than has ever been spent on any early development of a show. That is just crazy. And I think that
yeah.
the main takeaway that I have from this is money well spent.
Agreed. Yeah. Like, the CGI was actually well put in because nowadays you got CGI that is oversaturated in
Mm.
every scene possible, and you don't know what's going on. But here in this TV show, it is absolutely amazing. The prosthetics, like they actually brought back ideas from the original trilogy and thought, the costumes, the orcs and makeup and like the style of it, it was really well done.
Yeah, I mean, we've already spoken about the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings trilogies on the podcast, so you can listen to those episodes if you're interested in our thoughts. But basically, one of the things that we took out of the Hobbit, especially, was just that they used so many more visual effects, and it just doesn't look nearly as good as Lord of the Rings, which has so much more practicality to it. One of the things we spoke about was the orcs. Whenever the orcs are CGI in the Hobbit, it just looks distracting and
Yeah.
just like it's not the disgusting and like grimy creepy creatures that the orcs that we kind of see in the original trilogy, but this show, it brings, for example, it brings that back. The orcs are amazing and their prosthetics are amazing. There is in episode 3 there's a whole section where Arondir, who is an elven character, has been captured and is made to dig this tunnel by the orcs, and you can just see all these orcs and they're so threatening and disgusting and just incredible. And
Yeah.
this show is really gory as well. Like, this
Oh,
show properly
yeah.
goes for it, and there are some sequences where you can see blood oozing out of wounds and dripping, and it's amazing.
Yeah, that is like really interesting how they brought that into the whole thing about, the orcs and the gore as well. It's very different, you don't normally see in Lord of the Rings trilogy. And what I love about Rings of Power, they explore everything like world building, characters, themes, and every part of these characters' relationships. I thought it was just well developed and I thought it was just worth exploring. And the best thing what Amazon did as well, that they added lore into the Prime Video page, so like you can look through, explore what
Yes.
they were talking about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That is like just a really good detail. There's a lot of elements that are really faithful to the original, and they obviously changed some stuff as well. I know that a lot of people don't like how they've changed stuff. I mean, it's an adaptation. You got to. There's not a single adaptation out there that doesn't change things, take liberties, and they've added characters and they've changed details, and I think that that's really interesting in some cases. Some cases I'm a little bit less sure. We'll talk about that. Particularly involving Sauron. We'll talk about that a bit later. But they definitely do change things. But I think that while I don't think all the characters are very well realized, I think that they're all very well acted, and it's a wonderful cast that they've brought together. And I hate that we have to do this again, but I just want to say for all the racists out there, shut the fuck up, man. Racists and sexist people talking about, like, oh, we're having black elves and female characters with any agency in the plot. Please just get out. Like, this space isn't for you. Like,
Yeah,
Middle Earth and this kind of content is for everyone. We talked about this when it came to Kenobi. It seems like we're talking about this a lot. And it's just like, I hate having to say it, but we've got to say it. And it doesn't bother us at all. I really thought that there were so many great characters in this. And
yeah. That is really sad to see. Like, I don't use Twitter anymore, but I was like on Instagram, and there was some people that were doing stupid and wild takes, and it was just so racist. Like, they were talking about he was the dwarf
Durin?
that not Durin, but he was married to
Oh yeah, Disa.
Disa. Yeah, that's the name, Disa. And then people got really mad about it. Like, oh,
Yeah.
why are we having a black dwarf? Like, shut up, man. This is for everyone. You're supposed to get everyone in. Yeah, this is not tolerated here. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I want to use that as a springboard, though. Let's talk about the dwarves first and foremost. Let's kind of go through every plot line. I think the dwarves story was my favorite part of the show. And
Oh,
I
really?
think that, yeah, like, I really, really liked the friendship between Elrond and Durin. I like the way that they realized Khazad-dûm. Obviously, it's easy to
Oh,
forget that
Khazad-dûm, yeah.
when you watch Lord of the Rings, this is Middle Earth, way past its prime. When you look at Minas Tirith and Moria, you look at all these places and they're beautiful and they're stunning. But in this show, you see that they, in their prime, were just incredible. And I think the dwarves have like a really good conflict about whether to help the elves, or like stay with their own selfishness. And I think, particularly following Durin and Disa and just like this kind of corner and their struggle, or particularly Durin's struggle with how he feels about the elves, I thought that was so good.
Yeah, I thought that dwarf storyline was actually well done. Like how they explored, what you said about the relationship between Elrond and Durin. It was a great way of like setting up, the relationship between, the elves and the dwarves in that time before, the Hobbit, because the Hobbit had the conflicting relationship between the elves and the dwarves, which wasn't explained in the theatrical cut of the Hobbit. Thank you, Hobbit.
It's barely explained in the extended edition. I think we get a lot more about it here, and it's a lot less black and white in this show. It's not just like, oh yeah, the elves didn't help the dwarves or whatever, and like I think there's a lot to be said about that. And there's some amazing scenes. Like one of my favorite scenes early on in the show, I think maybe episode 2, is when Durin and Elrond has lost the rock breaking contest and Durin is escorting him out. And Elrond's like, listen, we were friends. I don't know why, whatever I've done to you, I'm really sorry. And Durin's like, you know what? It's been 20 years. And to you, that might be a blink of an eye, but I've had a life in that time. And you just don't care. And you only come back now because you want something. And I think that's just really interesting. Like, you don't, in no other kind of Middle Earth material, particularly on screen, we haven't explored that. We haven't explored the fact that elves are immortal and just kind of don't understand the way that mortality is. But it's interesting that this show confronts the elves with that. They confront them with the idea that their light is fading and that they may become mortal, and what will they do to save themselves?
Yeah, that was one aspect that we hadn't explored, and I'm glad that we did because it just went out over our heads. It reminded me, that relationship in The Hobbit between forgot her name and the dwarf.
Yeah,
The
sure. Tariel and Keeley.
Yes, that relationship. I thought that wouldn't work if the elves are immortal and they just see their loved ones go. And I thought, in this one, it was a great way of, showing that, like, oh, they are immortal. How are they going to revive their relationships with other people that have been long gone, and 100 years is like nothing to them, and they could be gone. It was like well explored. During he had 2 children, he was married, and then our one didn't get to see of that, and I thought that was really emotional.
Yeah, absolutely. And you get those emotions throughout, like when Elrond finally tells Durin the truth, and he says, our light is fading. And Durin realizes that he holds the entire fate of the elves in his hands, and he just kind of has to sit down for a moment, and it's like, so you're telling me that this is like this decision is going to affect all these people, and it's a really big thing for him. And then at the end, when Durin the Fourth, King Durin, won't let Durin the Third, Prince Durin. There's so many Durins, man.
There's so many Durins, yeah.
He won't let him mine for the Mithril. And Elrond is just a great character, and he's really understanding. And
Oh, yeah.
He's a wonderful friend, and he's just like, I get it, I understand. And Durin is crying, and Elrond is like, we don't say goodbye, and it's just a wonderful moment. And I think that for me, that was the best storyline in the show. I thought it didn't miss a beat, and obviously it's all visually beautiful, but I loved seeing Khazad-dûm and the architecture. And there's a great scene where Disa sings and she prays for the people who've been trapped in the mines for them to come home safely, and it's just brilliant, just wonderful. I love how this show explores aspects of Middle Earth that we've never seen before. I think that's its strength. When we get things we haven't seen before, I think that's great. But there are definitely times where we do get things that feel a little bit repetitive from the past. And I think that, like, for me, my least favorite part of the show, particularly early on, was probably the Southlands, like those human characters. I really didn't connect, particularly with Bronwyn and Theo. I just wasn't really vibing with those guys.
Yeah, I agree. I wasn't sure where the story was going to go into the Southlands because it was very hard to connect, as you said, with these characters. I felt like they didn't have a bigger purpose into the story. Like, okay, why are we following them? What's their wants and needs? It was very hard to connect with that. But then we've got which elf character? Because
Arondir.
Barondir. That was his name,
Arondir.
right? Aaron.
Arondir.
I'm good. Arondir. Right. Okay. So is that right?
I swear, I spent the first half of the season who are you? What's your name?
Yeah, exactly. That was me. I was trying to get everything.
Well,
okay.
Well, because you watched it all this week, right?
Yeah.
So you're still learning, and I've had 5 weeks where I've been like, okay, Arondir, Bronwyn, Sadok, I'm just naming all these people, and it's like,
But if you have subtitles on, that would greatly help you get to know those characters' names. But if you're trying to follow the story, I would recommend using subtitles because you'll get characters' names. But anyway, the Southland story was just empty until Galadriel came into the Southland story. There was purpose for that. Like, she wanted to lead the humans and save them. And the story with Halbrand into that as well. We'll get into Halbrand.
Halbrand is he's an entire thing. But I think that storyline, as it progresses, gets better. At the beginning, it didn't really feel tangible that this town wouldn't care about any of it, and the only people who care are Arondir and Bronwyn, who have this relationship that wasn't in moments I felt it was good, but other than that, it just kind of felt a little bit just there for the sake of it. And there were a couple of moments in episode 6 where it did feel like it was like a real relationship, and they had chemistry. But other than that, and I have to say, Theo. My God, the amount of time Theo annoyed the hell out of me with that sword. What are you doing? It's
I have no idea. It's it's just so funny. Like, you don't know what he's doing, and then you're like, why are we following this character? And then he finds this hilt in his house. And then the old man was like, the hilt, and no, I don't know the hilt. Like, well, it's mine, okay? That was it. That was basically the dialogue. That was it. Between the old man and the Theo. Theo was like,
yeah, no, it was a very strange thing. And I did spend a lot of the time in that bit just I don't know where we're going, It did feel very surface line. And I think that episode 6 is probably my favorite episode of the show. And episode 6
definitely
just made it all worth it. You get some stellar action, and I think it's the first time that I really felt the relationship between Bronwyn and Arondir. You get the moments where they're together. I felt like that really hit. And you get the brilliant scene where Bronwyn has been hurt and they're having to seal the wound, and you get the Numenor plotline converging with the Southlands, and the brilliance of the end where Theo realizes that they don't have the hilt, and the hilt is used to open the water, which all floods into the mountain, which activates Mount Doom. Amazing. Just brilliant. That is just a perfect balance of giving us setup for the future and things that we know, you recognize it's Mount Doom, it's a big thing, and it's also perfect, culmination of all these arcs that have all been driving to this point. Just brilliant.
another thing to add that, the way how it sets up Mount Doom early on into the show, you get to see the orcs using elves as slaves to dig up like a tunnel. And you're like,
Mm.
well, are they finding something or I don't know. And then it just unfolds into place. It's like, oh my God, they were using the
Yeah.
tunnel, using it for water to get into Mount Doom. That is great visual storytelling like that. I thought that
Yeah,
was
it's
just,
it's a really good build up, and that's a really good part of episode 3 as well. Like the elves are trying to escape, and the orcs are making them cut down this tree. And elves really love nature, and they love, and so like it's a
yes.
really big thing. It's a really big deal for them to cut down this tree, and Arondir touches it, and it's a really solemn moment. I thought that was just really beautiful, and you get a lot of horror elements with the tunnels and all the
Oh,
orcs
yeah.
creeping about. And there's a great sequence with Bronwyn and Theo when they're hiding in a house, and there's an orc, just one orc, stalking them, which I thought was really cool because in the past, we have seen people take down so many orcs, like, mowing them down easily. And in this one, they struggle just to get one. And I feel like that was, again, just really cool way to spin what we've seen before, but in a different perspective.
Yeah, there was like more horror elements, as you said, that helped to, show these orcs as terrifying.
There's that really horrifying sequence where Arondir is struggling against the really big orc and it's bleeding all over him, which is just like so cool and so gory. But then they find out that the orcs that they've killed so far, their blood is red, not black, and they find out that they've been
Oh,
killing
yeah.
like their own people, and it's just like absolutely gut wrenching.
It's like, oh no, they were killing each other this entire time. And the way it slowly builds into like the idea that they were fighting this entire time, and then the orcs sneakily like taking them out, and like, oh,
Yes, they start shooting them all, and you get a lot of like people mowed down, and obviously Bronwyn gets shot, and like that's a great sequence. There's so many cool sequences of bows and arrows in this show. There's a
oh,
great bit
of
where
course. Yeah, yeah, I know, I
like
know.
Arondir saves Bronwyn and Theo, who are running from loads of orcs, and they're going through this forest again, visually beautiful, the forest and the mist. And somebody shoots an arrow, and Arondir catches it in midair and then shoots it back. It's so like elves have
It's
always
so
been,
cool. It's so
yeah,
cool, man.
elves have always been ridiculous and gravity defying and just really cool.
Uh,
We spoke obviously about Legolas, climbing up falling debris or bouncing between barrels or sliding down stairs on a shield or, all these things. And in this show, we get loads of that. Like when Arondir corners all the orcs into the tower and he kind of like jumps down and locks them in and blows the tower up. Just really cool action.
so cool, man. Yeah, it was so cool. I agree.
I've got to say the direction, brilliant. We have three
Oh,
directors here.
direction, yes.
J.A. Bayona, who you might know from Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, Wayne Yip and Charlotte Brändström, they just really brought it. And the sequences they did, there's just it's all so stunning. And I think that they were just amazing.
Yeah, the direction. They put so much time and heart into this, and I
Mm.
can tell, with the Amazon and the direction and the cast, I bet they wanted this whole thing to work, and I thought there was a lot of passion into it.
Absolutely. And then obviously they go back into New Zealand, which is great. Actually from here, it's not going to be shot in New Zealand. It's going to be shot in Scotland. So I hope that
Okay.
I hope that it still looks great, but I am obviously upset that it's not going to be New Zealand anymore.
Yeah, but we're watching Andor at the moment, so we can't wait
Yes.
to talk about Andor in
Yeah.
the upcoming weeks.
Which has also got a few sequences in Scotland as well.
Yeah, great place to film in Scotland if you want to get like really cool mountains and rivers and stuff. Yeah, it's really cool. I understand why they're filming it there, but why not film in New Zealand where the whole thing was set in, like in the original
Yeah.
trilogy and The Hobbit, they actually went back to New Zealand. Like,
Yeah.
yes,
And
like
it's a
it had that vibe, it had that aesthetic. Urgh!
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's a really good source of income for New Zealand businesses as well. Apparently, there is some behind the scenes reason, which I don't know much about, but apparently, yeah, like they've chosen not to go there for some stupid reason. But like that's a real shame. I want to kind of go back to the ending of episode 6, the volcano exploding. Amazing. I do want to say I wish more main characters had died. Obviously, you can't kill
Oh,
Galadriel, you can't kill Elendil. I know that Isildur is missing, but we know that he survives. We've all watched Lord of the Rings. But,
of course. Yeah.
Theo survives, Bronwyn survives, Arondir survives. One out of two of Isildur's friends survives.
I forgot the guy who got killed.
Yeah, I
One of
can't even
Isildur's
remember
friends.
his name. I think his name's like Ottimo or
R.I.P.
something.
All right. To
Rest in
that
peace,
guy.
King. I guess the worst thing is that the Queen Muriel is blind, so that's the definite one of the things that they do.
Yeah, she can't see. Well, we didn't see that coming. That's a terrible joke. We'll segue into yeah, more characters. Yeah, I feel like there wasn't any weight pulling you down with these
Yeah,
characters. Like there was no tension, or you feel like, oh no, they're gonna die. We don't want to see them die, and then just survives. Like Hellbrand
yeah,
survives.
yeah. Oh yeah,
Of
yeah.
course
No,
he
I think that
survives.
it's interesting because we are 1/5 of the way through. There's 5 seasons, 5 parts, and I think that once we have all 5 seasons, I think it's very possible that we're going to look back on the entire thing and understand every single thing. But we only have season 1 right now, and we have to now wait about 2 years for season 2. And I think that the main downfall of this season is it doesn't really function on its own as a complete season. Like the ending is like there's so many loose threads that obviously, they close a lot of stuff and they open it for the future, but there's a lot of loose threads. And I feel like the show in its pacing, it gets kind of slow around the middle. Episode 5 I thought was probably my least favorite episode because it was just so slow, and the plot lines hadn't converged yet, and the whole thing was continuously building to something that it felt like we were spending too long building. And I feel like the characters, another thing, at this point there is no real danger. We know that all the characters are going to survive because the show hasn't really killed off anybody major. And I do feel like hopefully when we get into season 2, hopefully we can start giving some like bigger stakes for people. I think there are 2 deaths of named characters in this entire thing, like
And I
good
don't know
good
what the
guys.
names.
Well,
Uh,
there is one death that I thought was really good in episode 8 of Sadok Burrows, one of the Harfoots,
oh
which
yeah, I remember
brings
now.
us which brings us to the Harfoots.
Oh, let's get into the Harfoot story. I thought this is a good story. It wasn't the best, but I thought it was blended very well into the world of this TV show. And the idea of the Harfoots, I thought they were just traveling around. I thought that was an interesting concept because they are ancestors of the hobbits. So they walk and they survive, and they were, the beginning, and then we get to see, the hobbits living in the Shire. And I thought that would be an interesting journey, how we get from there to Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, how they got there. And I think that would be really interesting, to explore those
Yeah.
5 seasons as well. And the Harfoot story there was a lot of emotional impact for me because,
Yes.
we get to see this Harfoot called Eleanor Brandyfoot, and
Yes.
she finds this mysterious man called the
Yeah.
Stranger,
Mm-hmm.
which we don't know the name yet.
Oh,
But
oh, oh, we do. Oh,
we
we
do.
do. It's not
But
official, but I don't know
it's
if you
not official.
caught the bit at the end. Well, because like they say that he's a wizard, right?
Yeah,
And he's 100% Gandalf, and I'll tell you why
he
he's
is.
Gandalf.
He is. Of course, he is.
At the
Yeah, tell me.
end, there's a really, really beautiful bit where he says, "Let's go that way," and she says, "Why?" And he says, "The air smells sweeter down there. When in doubt, always follow your nose," which
Oh
is
yeah.
that's an exact Gandalf quote from Fellowship of the Ring. There is no way they didn't put that in there because, like, the way that he delivers the line, the way that they kind of linger on it, he's Gandalf. There's no way that
Of
he isn't
course he is. Of
Gandalf.
course he
And
is.
I think
Oh.
that there's really, really beautiful, like, especially so there's, I think one of the best sequences in the show is when one of the Harfoots, Poppy, she sings this song. She sings
Oh.
This Wandering
Oh, that
Day,
was great. That was
and
great. That
you
was
just
absolutely
get this
great.
sequence of the Harfoots traveling again. The locations are beautiful, and they're struggling through. They're trying to push their carriage, and the stranger is helping them. And the music is beautiful, and you see them all laughing together and being wonderful. And there's this really, really beautiful bit where the stranger is looking up to the sky, looking to the stars, and the music, and like, that is one of the greatest sequences in anything Middle Earth. It was so, so beautiful. The visual storytelling was top notch. And like, I don't know, I think it's episode 4 or 5, maybe 5. It was, absolutely a highlight for me.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we got to explore, the stranger and his powers, because this is the early stage of Gandalf right here that we're seeing. Like, that is
Yes.
crazy because if you think about, Gandalf as a wise, old, powerful wizard, in the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit, he was very powerful. But if you get to see like the early stage, he could be unpredictable. Like that's what we're seeing in the show. He's unpredictable and he's got these powers and he didn't know what he's doing with them until episode 8.
Yeah, I think episode 8 he kind of, because he
Yeah.
destroys the witches, doesn't he? So I
Yeah,
think
so
that's the first time that he's properly kind of getting some sort of handle on his powers, and he gains some more of his intelligence.
yeah.
And I really love that he builds this relationship, because if you think about it, this could be why Gandalf loves the hobbits so much. Because
Exactly.
from the first
Yes.
day, yeah, because the first time that he was in Middle Earth, they were nice to him and they were kind. And even though it's their ancestors, I like the idea that Gandalf has followed them, and journeyed with them. And I spoke to somebody who said, this is early on in the show, and they were like, oh yeah, the Harfoots, just female Frodo and Sam. It couldn't be further from that. I really love the Harfoots have this ideology towards strangers of this really distrustful nature to them, and they're
Yeah.
still very kind of like wide-eyed, and like, and in Lord of the Rings you do get that kind of similar, like, keep your nose out of trouble and no trouble will come to you, that kind of thing. But in this, Bilbo and Frodo as protagonists, they're not jumping for adventure. They're not like, oh yeah, I want to see the world. Whereas Nori is a very different kind of protagonist, because she does want to see the world, and she, at the end of the day, she's just a kid. Like, it's easy to forget that Bilbo and Frodo, they're men. Like, they're adults. In the books, Frodo's in his 50s in Lord of the Rings, whereas
What?
yeah, Frodo's like 50 in Lord of the Rings.
Oh, I,
Yeah.
I,
So like,
I didn't know that fact. Okay, the more I
yeah, so
learn.
yeah, I mean, I guess that, casting people like Elijah Wood and all the other hobbits in Lord of the Rings, it makes them seem more innocent. It gives them a wide-eyed nature because they look so young. However, it is worth saying that in this, Eleanor Nori is so much younger, and you have that contrast with Sadok and the older Harfoots who are more distrustful. And I love that they turn around on that, and they end up helping her, and they all go off together. There's four of them, and Sadok's death was pretty emotional. He gets stabbed by one of the witches, and he helps them out, but eventually, his wound is too dire, and he sits down, and he's like, I just want to sit and watch the sun come up. And they all sit with him, and the sun comes up, and again, beautiful, just absolutely beautiful scene, and it really, really made me emotional. Absolutely, cinema of the highest order.
You can hear me just like in the background. Wait. Cinema. I just sound like a madman, just like trying to explain someone about like
You
the
are
best
a
film ever.
madman.
But yeah, it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
That sequence, like it was Gandalf in his early stage, and he has no idea what's happening, and he's led by Harfoots, and it was really beautiful, linking to Gandalf and the Harfoots, and then linking to the Hobbits, and it's going to be a really really excellent journey. How he creates that relationship between them. It would be worth exploring in the second season, how much he grows and how he, controls his powers as well. And you got the staff. You got a staff. Did
Yes,
you
he
keep that
did.
staff? Yeah.
No,
I
the
hope...
staff disintegrated.
Oh God.
Well, there is that. There is that moment, very brief. Well, I guess like for the first half of episode 8, they reveal the stranger is Sauron, and
Sauron.
I was, I was definitely like, this doesn't seem right.
No,
Sauron, he's too innocent to be Sauron. I never
he's too
doubted that.
innocent to be Sauron.
Yeah, I never doubted it was Gandalf. Like, it couldn't be Sauron. And I think that's a good time for us to actually talk about who is Sauron. Let's talk about Halbrand. Obviously, we get the reveal in episode 8
boy.
that Halbrand is indeed Sauron the Deceiver.
I'm a little bit bothered because the way it was setting up to be Sauron, you definitely knew it was Hellbrand. Like, since the idea when Adar, what's the orc name? Adar, yeah. Adar, when he asked, like, who are you? And then he doesn't respond. And then we'll never know why Sauron was about to kill Adar. You know that scene where he gets him and then he's about to kill him, but then Galadriel was like, "No, we need him alive." And then
I love that. I love your two voices for Galadriel. No, we need him alive.
it just fits, with Galadriel
It
in
does.
the Lord of
It
Rings.
does. We will talk about Galadriel. A little side note, I want to say, I thought Adar was a really cool villain. I like that he's kind of like a split between orc and elf, and he still has those elf tendencies. You see him kind of planting the seeds before the battle at the beginning of episode 6, or maybe it's in episode 5, I can't remember. But also, he's like, the leader of these orcs, and he does have this darkness to him. I really like that. I really liked him as a character.
Yeah, and it was really interesting how he was like the first elf orc. Urdak? Is it called?
Is that Uruk? I think
Uruk?
similar
Yeah,
to like
Urdak.
Urukai. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. Halbrand is just so interesting to me because I spent the first half of the season being like, I don't care about this character.
I don't care. Yeah.
Who is this man? No, I just spent the entire time being like, this guy is just. Well, he just beat up Aragorn. I was like, oh, he doesn't want to be king, but then he is going to be king. And so, on the one hand, I am happy that they did do something different with him.
Yeah.
However, this is just not how I imagined it. And I feel like, I may become more okay with it as time goes on, but it's always been a thing. This is something that Tolkien wrote, that Sauron came to the elves as Sauron the Deceiver. He had a different name. I can't remember the name, but he came to them and he persuaded them to make the rings. This is like the whole thing, right? And this is why that they were deceived. This is why we see it in the beginning. But this is not how I imagined it at all. I imagined him being more fair than Halbrand is. I imagined, because Halbrand was so suspicious the whole time. I don't think that Sauron the Deceiver should be that suspicious. But yeah, I think that I don't know. I think the whole reveal that Halbrand was Sauron was just a bit clunky, and I just wasn't sure about it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about it as well.
Yeah, we get that whole sequence where Halbrand takes Galadriel through her memories and they kind of like confront things. And I was just kind of like, I just don't know if I was really that gripped by Halbrand the entire time. And there was just that shot, one of the final shots of the show, of Halbrand walking to Mordor with this like black cloak on. He just looked so stupid. He really did. And I just don't imagine when you see Sauron in Lord of the Rings in the prologue, and he's massive and he's got this huge helmet. I don't imagine under it it's just the bearded, beautiful face of Halbrand. I'm just like, what's going on? And apparently, the actor of Halbrand didn't even know half the time when they were shooting, didn't even know that he was going to be Sauron.
Oh,
so like I feel like maybe if they'd have told him, he might have been able to play it a bit more sinister and a bit more suspicious. But I don't know. I just wasn't vibing with that, really.
That's so strange. Why didn't they tell him? Because this would have made his acting choice like, oh, okay, so I got to be like, very dark or a bit charming. But that's a very strange thing to do, not telling an actor that you're going to be the villain of the whole story of like Tolkien's world. You got to be the main villain.
Yeah,
like
it's
it's crazy. It's like saying.
He's not just the villain for Rings of Power. Sauron is the villain in Lord of the Rings. Like, he transcends this show. It's such a big role that you can't, it just felt off to me. I'm gonna have to spend time getting used to it. And I know that the show's done it now. He's Sauron. That's it. We're gonna have to get used to it. But I just wasn't vibing with this whole thing of him being the deceiver. And that's just not how I imagined it. And that's okay. That's fine. It doesn't have to be what I wanted it to be. But I'm not there with it yet. And I feel like hopefully seasons 2 till 5 will make him more of a terrifying antagonist.
Yeah. I was about to say, it's like not telling Josh Brolin that he's going to be Thanos.
Yeah,
in the film.
Exactly.
Anyway, yeah.
It's like saying to Hayden Christensen, okay, you're playing Anakin Skywalker, and that's it. And he's like, okay, hey, isn't Anakin Skywalker Darth Vader? No. What do you mean? No. That's I feel like there are so many intentional points in the Star Wars prequels where Hayden needs to play these scenes dark. You need to see that this guy could become Darth Vader. Same in the Clone Wars. You've got to see that Anakin has that darkness within him, and you don't really get that.
Yeah, you don't get that vibe.
I don't feel like he might be a little bit brutal in when he beats up those guys in Numenor, but yeah, I just wasn't. I'm not feeling it. But let's talk about Numenor in general. Another beautiful element of the show.
Yeah.
Like Numenor looks just
Sorry.
Oh, that is money well spent once again.
I sound like Mario, just like what? But yeah.
Sorry, that doesn't sound like Chris Pratt at all.
Mushroom Kingdom, here we go.
Oh man.
We will
Yeah,
talk about the
Numenor.
Mario movie. Sorry, we will
We
talk
will, we
about the Mario.
will.
We
Next
we
year,
will.
next year.
We
We currently
will.
have it scheduled for episode 140. So
Mark your
30th
calendars,
of,
my
30th of April, 2023. We're talking about Mario. That's a promise.
that's a promise. We will talk about Chris Pratt in his Mario form. Anyway, Numenor. Yes, money well spent. Like the world
Absolutely.
building. I'll talk about the world building like again and again and again. Like it's so good. Like it's so beautiful. Like with the castles, with it's like in the air, and then the massive statues of the people in Numenor, like maybe the kings or the queens, and it was like really really interesting. Like how they
Yeah.
used all of that and money well spent. Well
Absolutely.
done,
You
Amazon.
can see again, like with Khazad-dûm, like with like with Linden and the other elven societies we see, you can see how this becomes what we see in Lord of the Rings. You can see how Numenor, that architecture, becomes what we see in Minas Tirith and in Gondor. And it's all just so compelling. And I think that with Numenor, you get some great characters. I love Queen Muriel, her being plagued by this vision of Numenor flooding, and her wanting to help because she feels like her duty, how she deals with her blindness. I really like her. I really like Elendil and Isildur, getting to see them at the prime of their life. But I have to say, other than those three characters, Numenor was a drag. Like we spend like 3 episodes there when we only really need one or two, maybe one and a half. And like there are just so many characters. There's like Isildur's sister, there's the king, there's Isildur's sister, there's the king, there's like Muriel's cousin,
The
there's
queen.
Isildur's friends. Like there's so much going on in Numenor, and we also have to follow Halbrand and Galadriel, and it's just like, guys. And the fact that half of it doesn't even come back, like half of it barely has any bearance in the rest of the plot. It didn't feel right.
There's one thing that really annoyed me was at the end, Isildur's sister.
Yes.
I don't know their names, man. Isildur's sister. She helps the king, and then the king's like, sorry, that made me laugh. Sorry.
Uh, I'm
Go
weak.
look at the ball. And then he just dies. But
Yeah.
Isildur's sister just looks into the bowl, and then we don't know what happens.
Mm.
We never know what she look into. We will never know.
I guess we'll find out because we know that
In
in Lord of the
season
Rings.
2 to be continued. Electric
Well,
Boogaloo.
there's a lot of loose threads. Like that's a loose thread. There is the three rings that we see at
There's
the
so
very.
many loose threads. There's so many loose threads.
There's the Balrog. There is the Nori. What am I hearing? Why are you so far away? John, John,
Here we go. Here
John,
we go. I
John.
just dropped.
Where are you?
I'm so far away. Help.
No.
No. But anyway, to be honest, yes, there's so many plot holes. Like I might sound like an idiot, but how did Erendit escape?
Escape where? Wait, when? What?
How did he escape from the building the tunnels?
I don't remember. It was weeks
Exactly.
ago. I can't remember.
Exactly.
Oh my god, John, you have too much power with this new microphone.
I'm sorry.
Using
I
the
might
volume
sound a bit.
levels perfectly.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for people who are listening. I am very loud, but
I can just remember. I remember him running through the forest. I can't remember how he actually escapes.
exactly. That's how I was like, wait, did I miss something? Because I watched this through this entire week, and I'm still thinking about how did he escape? Like, there's no flashback, no anything to explain how he escaped. I'm not.
Okay, here we go. He meets Adar, and Adar sets him free and tells him to deliver a message. Right
I don't remember that.
in episode 4. I've literally got the clip up here. So he's kind of they're talking, and he's like, "You've got to send a message for me," and that's that.
That's completely blocked out of my memory. I was like, oh,
No, sure.
it's
Well,
Adar.
I think episode 4 and 5 were the weak ones for me. I like elements of them, but it's the fact that they spend so long crawling along in this narrative, and when
And there's a
you
lot
just
of
want to
dragging.
you just want to get to see you just want to get to episode 6, don't you?
I want to see action, and then just
Give
trying to
me
get-
all. Yeah,
Give me
exactly.
all. Where's the bow log? The bow log is going to be in season 2. We saw
Yes,
the
gotta
trailer.
wait for that Balrog.
We were so excited.
Why put the Balrog in the trailer? I'm sorry, but this is another weird marketing thing. Why are you putting it in? What?
Only
why?
for 1 second. Only
It's
for
weird.
1 second
weird.
in the show, we get to see one bow log just getting mad for some reason.
Well,
And
in the books, Sauron had Balrogs working for him in the wars, so we might see some of that, maybe.
oh, multiple Balrogs.
Yeah.
Oh, oh, you know, it'd
Mm.
be really cool. Gandalf fighting multiple Balrogs.
That would be interesting. I feel like that would be very interesting. And then so when he meets the Balrog in Fellowship of the Ring, it's like the rematch.
The
It's the
rematch.
rematch of the century. Gandalf
You shall not
versus the Balrog.
pass. Anyway, what
Um,
were we talking about? Sorry.
Either
Oh yeah,
that or
Balrog.
either that or Gandalf becomes friends with the Balrogs, and he's like, "Hey guys, you can pass." And then in Lord of the Rings, where he's like, "You can't pass," it's like a big moment. He's like,
Just like that one Balrog just like ruined everything and just like, oh no.
"Yeah,
And I know that one
maybe
Balrog.
maybe a Balrog kills all the Harfoots." No, that's not happening.
That would be
That's not
super
happening.
dark. That would be
It
super
would be.
dark.
I wonder. I don't think we're going to see all the Harfoots in season 2. I think it
No.
might just be Nori, and then maybe in season 3 we'll see all the Harfoots again, because I feel like that moment where she leaves the Harfoots was very emotional, and yeah, I feel like we'll get to see them again. The final thing that we need to talk about is Galadriel herself, the main
Ah,
character,
yes.
arguably. See, I like Galadriel sometimes. Other times I do not. I feel like, especially early on, her characterization is so just like, I want to find Sauron. I need to find Sauron. She's hell
That
bent on doing this thing, and it does feel, because she's so hell bent on it, you can't really get that opportunity to explore other things.
yeah.
You can't really explore what her life is like otherwise. But then as we continue throughout the show, there are some really great moments. There's that moment where she talks to Theo about Celeborn, her husband, who is maybe dead. I mean, we know he's not dead. He's in Fellowship of the Ring, but like she thinks he's missing or whatever. And there are moments where she will talk to like Elrond, and those moments generally are strong for her. I think that she's a really interesting character and really compelling, and I think that there's a lot to explore there with her. But I
Yeah.
don't. I think sometimes she was very one note, but excellently portrayed. Again, the acting in this show is all brilliant. I have no. I mean, apart from I wasn't very sure about the choices for Halbrand. Other than that, I think the acting was wonderful.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And with Galadriel, she was very one note, as you said, but I thought it was very empty on some certain stuff. Like there wasn't really like moments that I can connect like with her. But the acting, yeah, the acting,
Yeah, I think a big reason why Galadriel is difficult is because the opening of the show, the prologue, is the most confusing thing you will ever see.
oh,
While
why?
in
Why?
while in Lord of the Rings, in Fellowship of the Ring, the prologue is concise and easy to understand. In this one, there's so much going on, and you're unsure: has Sauron been defeated? Has he not been defeated? How does Morgoth fit into this? And like
Oh
we then
yeah.
pick up with Galadriel on her hunt for Sauron. I feel
Oh
like
yeah.
that makes her character very difficult to get with initially. But there are like some great moments, like when she jumps from the ship at the end of episode 1. I thought that was just
Which
like really cool.
yeah, I agree that was really cool as well. Yeah, I can understand why the prologue can be confusing. Like there was so much going on. Like,
Mm.
ah, yes, my brother, and then he died. He got killed by Sauron. But yeah, it was a bit confusing. But I just followed and like, okay, that's
Mm.
where we
I
are.
mean,
But then,
hey, it was 6 weeks ago for me. So I mean, or 7 weeks ago. So in fairness,
I'm
you only just watched it, so you probably remember a lot more about it than I do.
yeah,
Where I'm
I
just like
understand. I
remembering
understand.
fragments.
I understand. You're like, I don't know what's happening. Who's that character?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
But
it's like a lot of TV. I think that this show will definitely benefit from a rewatch, because there's I'm 100% in favor of the weekly model of TV. I'm not a huge fan
I
of releasing
agree.
everything at once, and being able to watch something and then think about it is very important. You spoke about Andor earlier, which is an amazing show. I'm watching every episode twice, and I feel like that's really helping me kind of get through it. Whereas with this show, I should have probably watched the episodes twice. I feel like it would have been beneficial. So I guess when we come to talk about season 2 in a couple of years, and I'll probably rewatch season 1, there'll definitely be a lot more that I will notice and probably appreciate about the show.
Yeah, and what I'm really happy with the show is that they explored everything. The characters were well
Mm,
emotionally intact. And then there was like so many beautiful moments, like that singing Nori's
yes.
friend, yeah,
Yeah.
Nori's friend singing, and especially the last scene where they made the three rings for the elves, and
Yes.
that was a great way of like ending the show because in the beginning of Lord of the Rings they tell you about the three rings that were created.
Yeah.
And it just makes you wonder like how the rings were created, and it just goes
Mm.
back, explores everything, like Mithril.
It's very interesting that this whole show, I was like, I wonder whether they are going to make any of the rings in season 1. I was prepared for them not to, but I think it's very interesting that the whole Mithril plot line is very much like getting to that point of making the rings. And that final moment when they're all standing over it, it's got this kind of sinister edge because you know where it's going. And I thought that was really cool. And yeah, I think that was a really good way to end the show, having the first 3 rings, only 17 more to go. And I
Oh boy.
really enjoyed that. And I
Yeah.
have to say though, did you notice the song that was playing at the end?
It was very
It was a weird
recognizable.
song. It was a
No,
weird song. So that is the I don't know the
I don't think I
poem
listened to it. I don't think
that
I
that
listened to it.
that's the rings poem from the books, like 3 for the
Oh,
elves, under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in the halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all in the land of Mordor when the blah 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 blah. But the fact that they were singing it, I was like, this is weird. This is just weird. If you just played music, just orchestral, again, the music in the show is beautiful. Bear McCreary, great score. Again, you can't fault this show on a technical standpoint, but like the song they ended it with, I was just laughing. I was watching it last night and I was like, this is just goofy. Like, this just doesn't fit the tone of it at all. I was like, this is
yeah.
just
Wait, was it
weird.
like cheery? Was it like cheery? I
No,
did.
it was kind of, it was pretty eerie. So it fit the tone in its melody, but it's the fact that it had lyrics that were singing about the rings. It's just it just feels weird. Like,
Oh, yeah.
all
That's
the all
weird.
the all the Middle Earth things, all the movies so far end with the song, and I think all the songs like work, especially Into the West in Return of the King is such a emotional piece of music. It makes me tear up every time I think about it. But this one just kind of felt weird. I was just kind of sitting there like, this is a bit odd. This is a bit strange, I think. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say about Rings of Power.
Yeah. Actually, a really good start to
Yeah,
exploring Rings of Power. It's really good. It's really good content if you want to explore origins of the world.
yeah, and there's a lot more to explore. We haven't seen any ents, no spiders, no dragons, no goblins, no trolls. There's so much more that we can do, and I definitely think that over 5 seasons we'll really get a great breadth of all the different things in Middle Earth. And I'm sure that season 5 will end with the last alliance between men and elves. Sauron's defeated. I can't wait. So I
Yeah.
guess we'll pick back up in 2024.
Yeah,
I think.
baby.
Woohoo! This is definitely going to be the longest podcast since The Hobbit, probably.
Because there was so
So
much
much to
to
talk
explore.
about.
Yeah, so much to talk about.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, what are you going to give Rings of Power out of 10?
A 7 or an 8, but I'm thinking it's 7.
Yeah, I'm going 7 as well. Its highs are some of the best Middle Earth content.
It's really good. It's really good if you
It
want
really
to
is. Yeah,
explore. Yeah.
definitely watch it. Make up your own mind. Don't listen to people on the internet. Make up your own mind. Come at it from a perspective that isn't listening to a lot of the bigotry out there. And if you are the bigots, I don't know why you're listening to us. Please leave.
Get out!
So,
Get out!
whoa, that was so loud, but appropriate.
Sorry.
Thank you everybody for listening.
Sorry for the microphone users. I'm
If
sorry.
you
If you're
if
listening to
you
headphones, I'm so sorry. I'm so
yeah,
sorry.
rest in peace, headphone users. If you enjoyed it, if you're watching on YouTube, if you and you enjoyed it, give it a like, and you can subscribe if you want to see more. And if you're listening on Spotify, you can follow us and give us a 5-star review if you think we're worthy. And next week we're going to be talking about She-Hulk. Okay, but the week after that, Black Adam, baby. Hierarchy of power in the DC universe is about to change.
Yeah, baby.
Now I'm excited for that.
I'm excited for that.
And of course, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at OurTimeFilmPod. And you can send us an email, tell us your thoughts on Rings of Power, ask us questions, and we will reply to them right here on the podcast if you email us at OurTimeFilmPod@gmail.com.
We thoroughly enjoyed talking about Wings of Power. Give it a watch, because if you just listen to us, it's like, oh my god, Wings of Power, it's so good. But just watch it. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's great.
that is what we sound like. Oh my God, John,
Oh
Rings
my
of
god!
Power.
Oh my god!
It was
Wings of Power.
incredible.
Oh my god! So yeah, thank you for listening. We enjoyed talking, as I just said
Absolutely.
before.
Absolutely.
Yes,
You did say that.
thank.
Yep, it's true.
Yeah, spooky. spooky month. And there's like no other way to
every
like
every pod in October, it has to happen that you just randomly say it's spooky month.
spooky month. Ooh.
Brilliant.
But She-Hulk, yeah. I hope you enjoyed it. If you watched She-Hulk, we'll talk about that next week.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, thank you for listening again. Take care, be good, and be safe. Take what you're given.
Give nothing back.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.